Hello, my cubs, and welcome back to another cozy reading. Again, one requested by you guys, so I do hope you enjoy. But now grab yourselves a tankard of mead, pull up a bench by the fire, as it is time for the warp in the West, which is in fact a report compiled by Alvius Tero, the Blade's archivist, marked secret for your eyes only. Let me offer my congratulations to your lordship for your recent appointment as ambassador to the court of Wayrest. Your lordship asked me for a review of existing Blades accounts from 3rd Era 417 concerning the warp in the West, and for a summary of the current state of affairs there. Since your lordship was in Blackmarsh serving in the staff of Admiral Sosorius at the time, you probably know of these events only from imperial proclamations and chapel declarations, which identify this period as the Miracle of Peace. During the Miracle of Peace, according to official accounts, the formerly war-racked Iliac Bay region was transformed overnight from a patchwork of squabbling duchies and petty kingdoms into the peaceful, modern counties of Hammerfell, Sentinel, Wayrest, and Orsinium. The Miracle of Peace, also known as the Warp in the West, is celebrated as the product of the miraculous interventions of Stendar, Mara, and Akatosh to transform this troublesome region into peaceful, well-governed imperial counties. The catastrophic destruction of landscape and property, and the large loss of life attending upon this miracle, is understood to have been tragic and beyond mortal comprehension. Inasmuch as this account confirms and validates the current borders of these counties, and identifies the rulers and boundaries of these counties as ordained by the Nine, the Miracle of Peace serves imperial objectives of peaceful consolidation of ancient petty states and sovereigns into manageable imperial jurisdictions. The other remarkable features of these events: mass disappearances, armies mysteriously transported hundreds of miles or completely annihilated, titanic storms and celestial phenomena, apparent local discontinuities of time, fit comfortably into the notion that these events are part of a vast, mysterious divine intervention. However, this is only the public account of these events, and, as you may suspect, it conflicts with many other accounts. In short, while this explanation suits imperial policy, it has a little historical validity. Your lordship should know that the Blades have concluded there is no plausible historical account of these events, and despairs that a plausible historical account shall ever be produced. The Blades have concluded that a miracle occurred, insofar as the events are inexplicable. But the Blades strongly doubt the miracle was of divine origin. There is good reason to believe that the ruling families of the 4 modern Iliac Bay counties had full warning of the event. There is also some evidence that some of these ruling families may have been directly or indirectly responsible for the event. We do not know the exact sequence of actions that produced the event, although we are confident that the totem artifact was involved, and that a Blades agent was involved in employing that artifact. We unfortunately lost contact with that agent immediately after the event. His report might have gone some way to resolving the contradictory and paradoxical accounts of the event. The Blades have on file few reports from agents dating from the Warp in the West period. Most of our agents were lost in the initial dislocations, and others were lost in the confusion after the event. I present a few of these reports to give you a general sense of their limitations, including the report of your diplomatic predecessor, Lord Strahl. You will have had access to other private and rumoured accounts of that period. I believe you will agree that these documents raise more questions than they answer. The report of Hammerfell agent Briarbird. I was on assignment in the Alika Desert, a few miles south of Bergama, on the 9th of Frostfall. I was encamped, as it was still early morning, when I felt the ground shake so violently I was thrown to the ground. Dazed, I was aware of a great roar of a sandstorm which alarmed me, as I had been on a high dune and had seen nothing like that on the horizon. It was on me before I was even on my knees, burying me and my camp. When I crawled my way out of the sand, I realized that I must make haste and get to Bergama as soon as possible, as all my food and water had been swept away. The sun was just rising as I began. Like I said, when I reached Bergama, it was nightfall. The town was in chaos, filled with the soldiers of Sentinel. The Lord of Bergama's fortress was in ruins. There had been an attack, but no one had seen it, only the invasion that followed. The soldiers of Queen Akarithi of Sentinel refused to be interviewed about how they had accomplished this sneak attack. But I came to learn that the whole of northern Hammerfell now belonged to them. Even stranger, I discovered that my walk from sunrise to sundown had not taken me not 1 day, but 2. It was now the 11th of the month, not the 10th. I had lost a day somewhere, and so apparently had everyone else. Except Akarithi's soldiers, who somehow were aware of the correct date. I since have concluded that they had received advanced warning, and so were better prepared to deal with the strange confusion of time and dates associated with the warp. The report of High Rock Agent Grey Lady. I was, at the time of the warp, undercover as a witch in the Skeffington Coven of Phrygias in central High Rock. In order to give my report, I had volunteered for an expedition to gather supplies, which would allow me the freedom to reach my contact in Camlor. I was traveling northeast along the foothills of the Rothgarian Mountains on the 9th of Frostfall, when I felt a great heat behind me. Like a fire. I turned, but I regret to say that I cannot tell you what I saw. The healers tell me my eyes were burned out of my sockets. I think I must have fallen into a state of semi-consciousness, for I distinctly remember falling as the ground seemed to give way beneath me. Then there was a series of explosions in the distance to the south, and I heard high whistling noises that were getting louder, coming closer and closer. I had my shield with me, and fortunately anticipated the volleys of some sort which were falling from the sky. Though I could not see them, I could hear them coming from a distance away, and was able to use my shield to block them from striking me. The assault stopped suddenly, and I could smell smoke. I learned later that most of the forest of Icolon and Phrygias had caught fire in an inferno that started further south in Dania and the Elessan Hills. Fortunately, I kept my bearings and moved north, finally reaching a temple in the wilderness where my wounds were healed as well as they could be. It was there I learned that there had been a 3-way clash between Daggerfall, Wayrest, and Orsinium, not far from where I had been, and that the land midway between their kingdoms had been decimated. Next we have the report of Ambassador Lord Nagon Strahl. His Imperial Majesty had sent me on a delicate errand, the details of which I cannot convey in this unsecured report. But my official capacity was to be the Emperor's ambassador to the court of Wayrest. From there, I was to meet with an old friend, Lady Brisciena, who was already in the vicinity. Foregoing any attempt at stealth, I was on an imperial barge, sailing westward on the Julesay, the morning of the 9th of Frostfall. I remember it was a slightly chilly day, but the sky was very blue. We had just passed the delightful riverside village of Candlemas when the captain sounded the alarm. There in front of us was a colossal wall of water, at least 30 feet high. It smashed our barge to splinters before any of us had a chance to react. I woke up on the shore, having been rescued by one of my servants who had miraculously not lost consciousness. He and I and one other man were the only survivors. I thought at first that it was suspiciously similar to what happened to another agent of ours in High Rock. But a short time before, where a freak storm had shipwrecked him in the Iliac Bay near Privateer's Hold, furious and determined to see if similar forces were at work, I began a quick march to Wayrest. The march, however, was not so terribly quick. The villages all along the Julesay were on fire, and the battles raged between the orcs of Orsinium and the soldiers of King Edwea in the formerly independent Principality of Golvedon, just east of Wayrest. I am an accomplished mage, and quite able to defend myself. But it took the better part of a week to make it those few miles to Wayrest. King Edwea and his queen Berenzia were celebrating their great victories when I arrived. By then, I had gathered the barest facts of the matter. That simultaneously there were 7 great battles in the Iliac Bay, and no one could describe them all at once. Only their blood-soaked aftermath. To summarize, on the 9th of Frostfall, there had been a 44 independent kingdoms, counties, baronies, and dukedoms surrounding the Iliac Bay. If one includes the unconquered territories of the Hrothgarian Mountains, the Dragontail Mountains, the High Rock Sea Coast, the Isle of Balfiera, and the Illica Desert. On the 11th of Frostfall, there were but 4: Daggerfall, Sentinel, Wayrest, and Orsinium. And all the points where they met lay in ruins as the armies continued to do battle. I was determined to find the truth from the king, even if I had to be a most undiplomatic diplomat to do it. Edwea, though a generally jovial sort, had blustered, saying he did not want to give out military secrets. The queen, ever calm with those unreadable red eyes of hers, told me, "We do not know." I think it is safe to assume that Berenzia did not tell me anything but the facts of her story, which I later verified after pointed interviews in Daggerfall, Sentinel, and Orsinium, was that they had learned of a certain powerful ancient weapon that was going to be activated. I shan't give the name of it here, out of fear that it would be used against Wayrest. The king had attempted to buy it from the young adventurer who had discovered its whereabouts. Edwea believed, as it turns out quite rightly, that other powers in the bay had also attempted to win ownership of this device. What happened then, as Berenzia said, we do not know. The morning of the 9th and the morning of the 11th somehow merged through some sort of war in the west, and Wayrest found themselves at war. Their land had expanded threefold, but they were under attack by Daggerfall to the west, Orsinium to the east, and Sentinel to the south. There had been no time to understand what had happened, the king said. They had simply reacted, sending their armies to defend their lands against these enemies, whose kingdoms had also gained a great territorial advantage. The battles continue on, now months later, as I return to the Imperial City to make my report. What more do I have to say? They are bloody, violent clashes, as is always the case with modern warfare. But I had been to the blackened, desolate no-man's land between the 4 remaining kingdoms. No mortal army caused that devastation. I can say that the force that shook the Iliac Bay on the 10th of Frostfall, 3rd Era 417, was infinitesimally greater than the power these mighty kingdoms are wielding today. I can say that there were other strange events on that day which kept the kingdoms from breaking free of the Empire, and accomplished likely more besides. And I can say there is nothing left of it, this power, this weapon, in the bay. The warp that it created swallowed it up. And they are on current political affairs in the Iliac Bay. Almost 20 years have passed, and the region, though transformed, has stabilized. There are no more disputed territories, and the kingdoms of Daggerfall, Wayrest, Sentinel, and Orsinium hold their new borders in a relative peace. Wayrest spreads across the eastern coast of the bay, stretching from the land formerly called Anticlair to half of Guavadon. Edwir has passed on to his ancestors, leaving his kingdom in the hands of his daughter, Elisana, who has 2 children by her royal consort, and seems likely to hold her father's lands. Your lordship may also choose to communicate directly with King Helseth and Queen Berenzia in Mournhold. Their primary preoccupations are, of course, with Morrowind's affairs, but they may still have useful observations upon Wayrest's ruling families and political environment that may aid you in your understanding of the court of Queen Elisana. King Gortwog of Orsinium controls much of the Rothgarian mountains as well as the profitable river coast of the Julesai. He persists in his demands that the Orsinium be recognized as an imperial province separate from High Rock. The Elder Council treats Gortwog as a recognized king and collects taxes directly from Orsinium. But officially, Orsinium remains a county of High Rock, though technically it spans both the provinces of High Rock and Hammerfell. Sentinel has gained the most land, sprawling across the entire southern Iliac Bay, from Abibon beyond the Dragontail Mountains, to the edge of Mornoth, Orsinium's territory. Queen Akarithi, at her death, left her enormous kingdom to her only surviving son, Lotan, who is now surely one of the most powerful kings in Tamriel. Daggerfall is still ruled by the Breton king Gothreid and the Redguard queen Orbki. Their land now encompasses all of Western High Rock. From the border they share with Wayrest at the Anticlair to the east, to the Ecolon in the north. They have 4 children now and are much beloved in their realm. If there are other repercussions of the mysterious warp in the west, they have not yet come to our attention in the course of 20 years of observation. Well, there you go, guys. That's quite the collection of historical accountings there, wasn't it? So I do hope you've enjoyed and maybe learned something of interest as well. And thank you again, guys, for requesting this one to be read. It was definitely a fun and interesting one for me to visit as well. So as always, if any of you have any further requests or suggestions for what we might read next, do let me know in the comments down below. But now until next time, everyone, stay cozy.